This conference will now be recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
So in our previous class, we were discussing about the data pages, right? So data pages will be having of two structures, that is page and as well as the list. If it is of page structure, we can able to pull only one instance at a time from the particular data class. And if it is of list structure, we can able to get multiple instances. Okay, and how are we getting the data onto the data page is not the matter. We can able to get the data onto this data page by using a report definition or by using an activity or the data transforms, or I can able to get it from the direct databases, or I can able to use it get it from using connectors, everything. So how are we getting the data? That is not the important. Once the data has been uploaded into this data page, if it has to be stored into the data page data will be stored on the clipboard permanently meaning 24 hours by default. And if you want to change the time strategy, we have to do it here. This is the thing we have discussed, and it will be of editable mode and read only. And if it is of read only, I can able to create this data page across three scopes: requester, thread, as well as the node. And one thing what I want to stress here is if it is of editable mode, we cannot able to save this particular data page at the node level, and there will not be any refresh strategy. This is the important things you have to understand. Okay, so you clear, right, about the data pages? So we had detailed discussion about the data pages, and we'll just see how to create one new data page and how to create this as how to give this as a source to the dropdown. So we have already seen how to use this existing data page as the source. So we're getting the perfect output also. Now I'll show you how to create one new data page and how to define the source in that, and how can we get the data. Once we get the data, how can we reuse it? So this is what we'll discuss now. Let me open the existing section. If you have any doubts in the data pages, meanwhile you can ask. This is important topic. And the important thing what you have to remember is, if you update the data in particular data class, then you have to remove the data page from the clipboard. If the page is already existing, it will be of having old data. So the new data what you are updating will not be reflected there. Okay, so in that case, what you have to do is you have to go to the load management and you have to clear this data page. Then next time when we are creating new work object ID, one request will be created, source rule will be executed, then it will be loading this particular data page with the fresh data. Okay, most of the people will be forgetting removing this data page from the clipboard. So they'll be just complaining saying like, I have updated my values in the data table, but still I'm not getting the values. So the thing is, there is already existing data page with the previous data, and the data page has to be removed, then only it will be getting a chance to hit the database again, then it can able to pull out the fresh data. That is the important thing you have to remember even in the real time. So this is our drop downs, right? And here we have defined the source. So this is the report definition source, and here we have defined one data page. So the data page what we are giving as a source here is the PRPC created data page. And now we'll be working on one exercise where I'll show you how to create the new data page, and in that there should be one source defined. Okay, we have to define the existing source. So this is the data table editor report, that is like PRPC has created for us. If I just open it here, how are we getting the source from this report definition is the final thing. Suppose if I want to get only 2 values or 3 values, however the thing we want to get the data that has to be defined in the report definition. Once we got the data, the holding purpose is with data pages. Okay, and what all the data you have to get, and what type of data, it should be sorted or it should be given the proper order. Anyways, how are we getting in which way we have to get the raw data, that will be dependent based on this report definition. Okay, if you want to apply some conditions, report definition will be pulling the data in with the conditions applied. Whatever the data we are getting finally out of this report definition, that will be stored for certain period of time with the data pages. So that is the importance of data page. That's it. Ultimately we will be getting the data with this report definition, I mean with the source only. So now I am trying to create a data page.
Chandra,
Yes.
I have one small question. Like, so in that case, what did you mean by source and what did you mean by data?
Let me tell you.
Yeah,
so this is our data page, right? So the data page meaning it will be holding the data. Okay, it will be holding the data onto the clipboard. And how are we getting this data onto this data page? That will be defined based on the source. The purpose of this data page is not to pull the data. Getting my point? The purpose of report definition is to pull the data, and the purpose of activity is to pull the data. And the purpose of data page is not for pulling the data. It will not be interacting with the database. Okay, the thing what it will be doing is it will be having one more rule which is defined as the source. Whenever this rule has been executed, it will not be interacting with the database. It will be making the source rule to be executed. Source rule meaning report definition here. Report definition, what it will be
Okay.
doing, it will be interacting with this corresponding class data. It will be pulling out all the necessary data here, and finally finally it will not directly put this data onto the drop down source. What it will be doing, it will be putting this as an it will be putting all the data into this data page. So this data page will be holding the data, that's it. Okay,
Okay.
so data pages will not be directly hitting the database. What it will be doing, instead it will be making the source rule to interact with the database. So yesterday also I told you, instead of we directly giving the report definition, in first case we have seen, right, we have given report definition as the source to the hospital, and now we are trying to give the data page as the source, and inside data page we are again having the same report definition. So instead of I giving data page as a source and the data page is again calling this report definition, instead of I having two rules executions, I can directly have this report definition as a source to my drop down. We'll be getting the output. Got my point? But whatever the data we're getting with this report definition should be holded. It should not be interacting with the database every time. It has to be holded. So data page mechanism is to hold the data on the clipboard. That's it. Understood now, Uma? Clear?
Okay.
So data page will not interact with the database. It will make the source rule to interact with the database. So once it getting the data, it will be holding it. So the data that we are getting using this report definition has to be pasted in this data page only. It should not be directly pasting it in the report definition. Sorry, it should not be directly pasting it in the drop downs. It has to retrieve the data and paste it in this data page, and data page will be holding there. That's the importance. That's it. And if you
Okay.
make this activity or anything, what it will be doing, whenever this data page is being executed, it will be making activity to hit the database. It will be executing obj browse, it will be pulling out the data, and ultimately whatever that data has been pulled out, it has to be placed into this data page only. And data page will be using it wherever you want for the next 24 hours by default.
Okay. So then it's similar to like a temporary tables, right? So like fetching some data and holding it in the data table editor report, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It will not be holding. Data table editor is one report definition rule. This report definition rule will be pulling the data. Once it pulls, so let me run and this show you. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to execute one report definition. The data table editor report is one report definition rule. I'm trying to run this rule. So I'm getting this data, right? So during runtime, it has to be executed. It will be pulling all the data what we have just seen. That data will not be directly put it on the drop down. What it will be doing, this particular rule has been executed from where? That will be the point. So if this particular rule has been executed as a source to the drop down, then the responsibility of this data to be displayed on the drop down directly. But now in this case, this particular rule has been invoked from the data page. Okay, whatever the data we are getting here, like 50-60 hospital list, that has to be retrieved to this data page list. Okay, and this data page will be holding the data, and this will be supplying the source for this particular drop downs. So why are we following two-step approach here is to hold the data, that's it. So ultimate goal of this, we going for database is to store it for certain period of time.
Okay.
And if you want to remove that, we can able to do clear the data page manually. Okay, and during runtime, we want to remove the data pages during runtime. This is by doing manually, right? If you want to remove it during runtime, there will be one OOTB activity, and we'll discuss after some time about that.
Okay, sure.
Okay, So this we call as a flushing of the data. If we just click on this, we'll be seeing here also the flush out. Flush out meaning it will be flushing out all the data related to this data page. This data page will be flushed out entire completely from the clipboard. So this seems to be a bit tricky if you are not, I mean, if you so if this is your new concept, it will be like a bit confusion for you. Just try to understand, and from the next day you can able to easily follow. So any other doubts, both of you, on these data pages? You understood about the scope also, right? Scope and
Yes.
this. So how are we getting the data? That will be defined by the source. So in this source rule, I can able to pull out only the values related to north or only values related to south. Suppose if I'm making this highest to lowest, and if I save this, then all this value what we have just seen will be coming in the reverse order, like starting with the West Bengal. Okay, it will be coming, it will be sorted out in the descending order. And how are we getting the data using report definition? That will be the final one. We will be seeing the same data reflected on the drop down values. Okay, once we get the data, it will be stored into the same data will be stored into this data page on the clipboard, and the data page has to display the same source. So now I'm trying to create one new data page. So this is my thing, right? So let me change this to report definition, submit this, and let me create one new data page in the states value. So if I just select the data page, it will be asking for the data page. So PRPC will be creating a data page for us now whenever we are creating particular data type. Now I will show you how to create new data type for new data page. So same again, right click, create data model, data page. So as I told you, if you are giving any value like full states data page, so whatever the value you give, it will be automatically appended with D underscore. So data pages by default should be of D underscore or declare underscore. If you are trying to edit this and remove this, then PRPC will not accept. It will be throwing some error. I think I showed you this now. So if I just click on save, I'm saving this. It should throw some error. Yeah, it is throwing some error like pages must start with declare underscore or D underscore. Okay, this is the blind practice. All the data pages should be given with D underscore or declare underscore. From the version number 7, they are calling data pages as, sorry, they are calling these pages as in data pages. Earlier they used to call this as in declare pages. So that's why they will be having the values like declare underscore page name. And now after version number 7, from version number 7, they are calling this particular page as in data page. So that's why they will be having D underscore. Okay, and still it will, PRPC will be accepting declare underscore also. Why? Because this is just meant for the upgrade purpose. Okay, if I want to upgrade my project from version number 6 to 7 or 8, or what are all the data pages that are already created, those has to be supported, right? So that's why it will be still accepting. So okay, I'm trying to create one new data page, and I want to use this data page to get the multiple values. Then it should be of list structure. Getting my point? And I want to put it read only, and let me make it to request. Across all the work object IDs, I want to use the same data. Okay, and now I want to use the source as report definition. I think we have already created one report definition, if you remember. So this is one of the report definition we have manually created, and let me check whether this is working fine or not. So if I just run this, what are the values we are getting it here? Ultimately these will be displayed there only. So here we are getting all the values sorted in the descending order. If I want to sort it in the ascending order, you can able to change it from lowest to highest. Now I'm making this to highest to lowest. Okay, and if you want to apply some conditions, anything, ultimately this is the main source rule to interact with the database. And whatever the data we are getting it here, it has to be pasted in the data pages, and from the data page it will be acting like a source to the drop down. Okay, just click on down arrow. So this is the report definition what we have created, correct? So I'm selecting this and save. That's it. Okay, so now this particular data page has to be given as a source. Declare underscore pull. So this is our data page, right? Select this. So once we select this, we have to give one value for the property reference. I want to give state code as the reference, and display name I want to make it like state name. If you still make this as a state code here also in the display name, you will be getting APTN like this values in the drop down. So I'm saving this. So if I run the work object ID, I should be having all the state values displayed in the descending order. That is my expectation. Let us see. So on data pages, there will be many interview questions. You just practice, it will be easy for you. So here we are getting everything in the descending order. Why? Because the source here is data page. Although the source here is data page, and data page will be having one more source called report definition, and this, based on this report definition data only, we have to get the data. So suppose if I'm changing this to lowest to highest, I'm saving this, and let me run directly from here and just check how the output will be looking like. Okay, I have to get everything like everything in the ascending order. And suppose if I want to apply some conditions like, so where region value is equal to north, save this and just run directly from here and to check the output. So this is working fine, and this will be the final result that will be displayed on the drop down. Okay, so you need not make any changes here. So you just refresh. Got it? So ultimately what are the values we are getting as part of this report definition? Those values are to be updated there. So the purpose of this data page is to hold the data. That's it. It should be deciding whether we have to execute the source rule again or not. If it is there, it will not execute. If it is not there, it has to execute, hit the database. Understood, right? So this is all the thing about data pages. Clear? Clear, right, both of you?
Yes, Chelsea.
So our next requirement is we have to provide linking between. Okay, we have to provide linking between the drop downs. Okay, so that is also very important. So once the customer is selecting one value like north, then he should be getting only the state values related to the north. So if the customer is selecting any value like north or south, only those related drop down values are to be displayed. So during runtime, what it has to do is whatever the value we are selecting here in the north, I mean in the region, that has to be passed as an input to this drop down. Okay, if I'm selecting north here, on changing of this north value has to be passed as an input here, and based on this input we have to filter out the results. Getting my point? So here I have to apply for some filter. So filter value should be whatever the value that customer is selecting in the previous value. So ultimately this is the state drop down. This is the source for the state drop down, and here it will be acting this, it will be having report definition as the source. Okay, ultimately report definition is the rule which is responsible for hitting the database and pulling the data. So here some rule has, here some condition has to be applied, right? Whatever the value I'm selecting, for selecting north there, that value has to be passed here, and that has to be applied as a condition, and based on the results value are to be pulled out. Okay, and if I directly give the condition here like north, what it will be doing? All the time it will be pulling the north values only. Even if I select south here, it will not be showing the south related states here. Why? Because we're we are hard coding the value like north. So every time this particular state drop down values will be coming with these values. So that's why we will not hard code with the values anytime. Okay, if I just hard code this, that will be useful only in that perspective. It will not be working generically. So that's why I have to send the input condition dynamically. If it is of north, the north value has to be passed out. If it is south, south value has to be passed out. Getting my point? So during during runtime, I have to send these kind of values as an parameter. Parameter is nothing like an input kind of thing. So now we have to discuss about parameters. So parameter is nothing like an one property kind of thing which will be holding some value, and that value will be passed from one place to another place, and this will be very useful during the runtimes. Getting my point? So if I select this first value as north or south, that value has to be passed as a parameter to this drop down. Okay, and here the source what we are using for this drop down, I'm initially using like report data page. Okay, so if I select north here, I have to send this north value as a parameter to this data page, and this data page has to interact with the report definition finally. And this particular data page which has been receiving the parameter, that has to be passed again to the report definition, right? That report definition has to pull out the results based on the parameter what we are selecting. Understanding? If I select north value there in the drop down, initial drop down, that north value has to be passed as a parameter to the next source, that is data page. What data page has to do? Data page has to accept that particular parameter, and the same parameter has to be passed as an input to the its source folder like report definition. So ultimately report definition, what it will be doing, it will be pulling out all the results based on the parameter what we are sending. Okay, so once it's pulling out all the necessary results based on the north value or south value, it will be holding the data and it will be putting it in the data page. So data page will be displaying everything in our drop down. So this is our approach. So here we have to make the data page to accept one parameter, and the same parameter has to be passed to the report definition. So how many rules I am using, those many parameters has to be passed out. Getting my point? Suppose if you are not going for data pages, in the second drop down as well as the third drop down, if you are directly giving source as report definition, in the second drop down you are giving states report definition, in the third drop down you are giving hospital report definition. So in that case, what you have to do, whatever the value we are selecting like north or south, that has to be passed as an parameter to the second source, that is report definition. So I have to make report definition to accept that particular parameter. Okay, once the value selected in this state value, that value has to be passed as a parameter to the report definition. So how many rules I am using to display one drop down value, those many parameters are to be created. So if I'm going with report definition, where I'm not using data pages, then I will be making only report definition to accept parameters. If I'm using data page, then I have to make data page to accept parameter, and I have to make report definition also to accept parameters. So once the parameter value has been passed out, that has results have to be filtered out based on this condition, based on the parameter value. So here if I apply this parameter, okay, if I am selecting north there, north will be absorbed, north will be accepted by data page. Data page will be accepting that north as a parameter, and that north value will be passed to this report definition, and I have to get the value like north here. If it is north, then it will be filtering out all these results based on the north, and if this value is south, it will filtering out all the values related to south. So you got my point? Understood, right, both of you?
Yeah.
So now I'll show you how to make this data page to accept the parameter meaning the initial property value, and after that we'll see how to make this report definition to accept the same parameter. Okay, so this is my data page. So this is my data page, right? This is working fine as of now. So this is my data page. Now I want to make this data page to accept the parameter. Parameter meaning it's nothing like a property value. So the north value or south value, this has to be passed as a parameter here. So for this, I'm trying to make this data page to accept parameter. So for that, you have to go to the parameters tab. You have to initially define the parameter, and then only it will be accepting the parameter. So I'm defining one parameter value here. What will be the parameter value? Like the region value, right? I'm giving something. You can give any meaningful value. That's up to you. So I'm giving something like region for data page, just for our understanding. That's it, nothing more than that. Okay. So data page, I mean, we have created this parameter for the report, so for the data page, and now save this. And now I have to make report definition also to accept the parameter. So this is my report definition rule. So go to the parameters, and here I'm trying to pass the same value. Whatever the north value, whatever the region value data page is accepting, the same parameter has to be passed here. I'm also giving something like data page for report definition. I'm giving both different names. You can able to observe. Whatever the value you want, we can able to give it. That's up to us. And this particular parameter is of which data type? That is what it is asking. I want to make this as a text. Okay. And come to the query tab, and we have to make few modifications here based on this parameter value. So here what we have done, I am making this our report definition rule to accept one parameter. So that's why I'm defining one parameter here. And now based on this parameter value, we have to filter out the results. Okay, so during runtime, this particular value will be having like north or south or east or west. Okay, so I have to filter out all the results using region value as north or south. So like region value as north or south. If I just give the hard-coded values, it will not work. So for that, I want to give the parameter values. Okay, if we want to define parameter values, we have to write like PARAM, capital P. This is very important. So all the parameters will be running on one page called param. So param is one OOTP page which will be holding all the parameter related values. So this is just like an PV1 page. So after this topic, we'll discuss about primary pages. So during that time, we'll discuss more about primary pages, PV1 page, and param. So you remember that if you want to define any of the parameters, sorry, if you want to use any of the parameters, then you have to give like param, capital P, and then click on dot, then we have to give the value. So you understood, right? This is the parameter what I have defined in this parameters tab, and this parameter value will be supplied from the data page for me, and for the data page will be supplied from the previous drop down. Okay, getting my point? I'm just saving this. I need not make any other changes here. So during runtime, this value will be updated to north or south or east or west. So let me know if you're not understanding. So this is the changes what I have made for report definition, and now this data page should accept the parameter. That's what we are defining it here. Okay, so if I define it here, data page will be accepting the parameters, and next thing is what we have to do is the parameter that data page is accepting has to be passed to the report definition. Okay, so that linking we still didn't do. So for that, you have to click on parameters tab. So this is the report definition, and the source here is report definition, and I want to pass some parameters before executing this report definition. For that, you have to click on parameters. Okay, so here it will be asking for the parameters for this report definition. Why? Because I'm trying to click on parameters for this RD value, I mean report definition, and during runtime one value has to be passed here. So that value, what should be that value? What should be the value? The value what data page is receiving. So in order to use that value, what I have to do? Param dot. This is the parameter for data page. Okay, so just for our understanding, in order to show you the difference, I'm giving this naming convention. It will be very easy for you. So what is this parameter? This is the parameter that has been defined for the data page. So this value has to be filled out. I mean, this value has to be supplied from the previous value. I mean, previous drop down. We'll just show you how to link between previous drop down and the data page. I will show you that. Now what I have done is I have made one data page to accept one parameter, and I have made my report definition to accept one parameter. And now in order to provide the linking between data page and the report definition, you have to click on parameters tab, and here it will be asking for the parameter of that report definition. You can able to see. The parameter for this report definition is the same parameter of this data page. Getting my point? Just click on submit and save this. So we have saved both the rules. Understood, both of you? So now I have to provide the drop down value like north or south that has to be passed as a parameter to this data page. So this is the pending thing as of now. So for that you have to make the modifications here. So this is my hospital selection. So I need not make any changes in this first drop down. Getting my point? Why? Because this is completely as defined by property only. I did not make any changes. And now what is the value I'm selecting here that has to be passed to the data page? Once I pass to this data page can able to pass this to report definition. Why? Because we have provided the link between both of them. On selecting this particular second drop down, when we are selecting this data page, select the data page again. If I select it, it will be asking for the parameter. Earlier it did not ask for the parameter. Why? Because this particular data page has no parameters defined. Okay, if any of the parameters defined for this particular rule, so during execution of this rule, it will be asking for the parameters. So what should be the parameter that has to be passed during runtime? So that is what it is asking here. So that is what it is asking. So what should be the parameter value for this data page? Okay, so if I just enter like north, so this value will be passed as a parameter to this data page, and whenever executing this particular data page, it has to execute the report definition also. So report definition, the same parameter. So this is the north value we have given, right? This same north value will be passed to report definition parameter also, and based on this value will be updated to north. So ultimately we'll be getting the results related to north only. Understood? But this should not be hard coded. So what should be this value? Whatever the value I'm selecting this north, this region drop down, that has to be given directly. So for that, just select the property, that's it. So if I select the property, so during runtime, if I select the north value, this particular property will be given with some value in the clipboard. Okay. If I select south or north, this particular property, region property, I'm sorry, I should not be giving, I should be giving region value. Okay. So this region value has to be given as an input here. If I select north or south in the clipboard, it will be holded under this property. This is the property which will be holding that value in the clipboard. This we know, right? And that value will be passed here as an parameter. So the value of this particular property will be passed as an parameter to this data page, and the value might be either east or west, and this value will be this one. The east value will be passed to the parameter, sorry, for the report definition also. Ultimately this value will be updated to east or west. It will be pulling out the results based on that. Getting my point? That's it, we are done. I have to just save it. So just save this and now run it. Okay, I'm selecting south now. What are the values we are getting? Only south values. If I select east, what are the values we are getting? Only east values. If I select west, what are we getting? Only west related values. If I select north, only these values. So this is working fine. So any doubts? Did you understand, both of you? Clear or confusing? Uma and Tulani, clear, right?
It's not confusing.
Yeah.
I understand the concepts, but in report definition also we have did the same list of selections, right? Here, what is the main difference between data pages and report definition?
Okay, so report with using report definition, I can able to hit with the database and it can able to use the data. So in this hospital selection here, I can able to directly select the report definition value. If I select the report definition, what it will be doing, it will be executing this report definition. So this is the report definition, right? This will be directly executing this report definition and it will be displaying it here. So that is one thing what we have seen. Okay, now the disadvantage with this is, so you understood till here, right? If I'm now changing the source to report definition and during runtime, this report definition rule will be executed and it will be showing the source here. And now if I just refresh the section, or if I'm trying to create one more data, if I'm trying to create one more work object, if I'm trying to create any number of work object, or if I'm trying to refresh any times, then it will be hitting the database those many times. Report definition rule will be executed those many times. So in clipboard we have seen, right? So if I just give this report definition as the source, we will not be seeing any difference in the output. We'll be getting the same values here. Okay, we'll be getting the same values. But if I refresh it in the clipboard, 2 pages will be created. If I again refresh it, again 3 pages will be created. So what it is doing? So as soon as I refresh, this particular control is executing the source rule. So the source for this particular drop down is report definition. So report definition is again executing, report definition is again interacting with the database, and it is again hitting the data, again pulling the data again. So for each and every refresh, it is hitting the database. Okay, so as performance will be reduced if it is hitting the database for these many times. So for each and every time it is hitting the database. Instead, if we go for data pages, okay, so as of now we understood this, right, Uma? We understood the disadvantage of we going for report definition, right? It will be
Yes.
hitting the database for many times.
Mm.
Okay, if we refresh it, it will be again hitting the database and it will be again pulling the same data. So for how many times you refresh, those many times it will be hitting the database and pulling the data.
Okay.
So this is the, I feel this is an disadvantage. So you understood this disadvantage. Now
Okay.
I'll tell you the advantage of data pages. So
Okay.
if I use data page as a source, instead of we giving report definition as the source here, if I change this to data page, what it will be doing is, it will be ultimately again executing the same report definition rule only. So earlier we are defining this report definition as the direct source. But now I'm trying to execute this report definition from the data page, and this data page is being given as a source. Why are we doing this two-step of rule execution? Meaning, if I give this data page as a source for the first time, if I'm trying to create the new work object ID for the first time, it will be executing this data page rule. What this data page rule will be doing? It will be executing this report definition rule. Okay, and it will be hitting the database. It will be pulling out and it will be showing the data onto the report drop down. And from the second time, I mean, if you are refreshing it again, or if you are creating new work object, anything, whatever the changes you do, you refresh this section for 100 times. So if you are doing the same thing for 100 times, data page will be restricting not to interact with the database. Okay, so earlier case, if I am refreshing it for 5 times, 5 different report definition pages will be created, meaning 5 different times it is hitting the database. But now if I use this data page as a source, data page will not be allowing to interact with the database for more than one time. If I'm refreshing this for 100 times, data page will be created for only, database will be interacted for only one time. Earlier case, using report definition, it will be interacting the database for 100 times. So one time is better than hitting 100 times, right? So that's why we'll be going for data pages. Clear?
Yeah, clear.
Tulani, you have any doubts?
No, Shankar.
So you understood these parameters also, right? Uma and Tulani, both of you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if I refresh it now, let me show you. Or if we create the new work object ID. So this is working fine. Earlier we have seen. So we are getting all these values by default. If I select a south value, it is working fine. If I select north value, it is working fine. If I select east, it is working fine. But on page load, remember that on page load for the first time, it is not applying any filters. You observe here, right? It is not putting out any filters. So by default, we should not be having this value anything. We should be getting only the select value only. If I just click on this also, I should not be getting any values, or I should be getting only north related values. But for the first time I'm getting all these values, and if I make any modifications here, it is working fine. If I revert it back to north also, it is working fine. Okay, so there is something mistake happening in the report definition rule. You have to understand that mistake is in the report definition, not in the data page. Why? Because the source of this dropdown is ultimately the report definition only, although we are having data page as a source, and in between it will be having report definition. Okay, the thing what it is doing is it is initially showing all the results, but if we make any of the value parameter passed like north or south, then it is working fine. For the initial time it is not working. Why? Because during page load, this is important. So during page load we will not be having any value here. So let me put the placeholder for this also, then it will be clear for you. I'm giving some placeholder. Save this, refresh. So I should not be getting any value loaded unless I select any value now. So I'm getting all the values now. If I select north, I'm getting only north related. If I select south, this is working fine. So for the first time, this particular dropdown is not working fine for me. The thing here is on the page load, there will not be any value assigned for this region dropdown. Okay, there will be some blank value in the clipboard. You can able to just check. There will be some blank value in the clipboard. Even if it is blank, data pages and the report definition are accepting some values as a parameter. Okay, getting my point? So if it is north value, that value will be passed here. And if it is blank, even that blank value will be passed to this particular data page, and the blank value will be passed to this report definition also. Okay, so if this is blank, this will be turned as in blank. If it is blank, it has to pull out all the results, right? So if this is blank, it has to pull out all the results. So that is the thing it is happening. So for the first time the parameter value will be blank, meaning we are not selecting any values, right, on the direct page load without making any modifications to the existing work object page. The parameter, the region value will be blank, and that blank value has been passed as a parameter to data page, and this blank value has been passed as a parameter to report definition also. So that is the blank value, and by default it is showing all the values. And from the next time, if I select north value has been passed as a parameter to data page, and north value will be passed as a parameter to report definition. Then it will be pulling all the values related to north only. Okay, but we have to make modifications. This is not the correct behavior. So for that, I should be making this report definition not to accept the blank values. So by default, it should be accepting some values like no east, west, north, south only. It should not be accepting blank values. So for that, we have to make modifications. So region value should be like param dot this one, and in order to make this not to accept blank values, we have to make one modifications. Let me show you. So you have to click on this gear icon, and you have to mark this checkbox. Use null if empty. So if the value is empty, you have to consider this value as a null. So meaning it should be filtering out all the values related to null only. It should not be filtering all the results. So I'm submitting this, and now save. And now you run and see. So it is not displaying any values. Why? Because this parameter value is blank here. It is empty now. Okay. Suppose if I'm not making these changes, save. And now if we run and see what it is showing all the values. Why? Because there is no parameter value has been given. Sorry, parameter value has not been given, and it will be taking that as an valid scenario, and it will be showing all the values. So that's why when you are working with report definition, this is very, very important. You have to remember this. Interviews also they'll be asking. Okay, got my point? And one more thing, in this particular data table. So in this particular data table, if we have multiple records of same values, so suppose like West Bengal, WB West Bengal East, if we have these kind of results for 10 times, WB, same thing. If we have multiple records and in the drop down also we'll be getting those many results, we'll be getting West Bengal for 10 times. Okay, so in that case, if we want to restrict the duplicate values, then you can able to do the same using report definition. You just click on this checkbox, then it will be filtering out only one value out of the multiple values. Understood? So this is the importance of parameters. Suppose if you are not using data page, sorry, if you are directly using only report definition as the source, what we are doing it here for the second drop down. So in the second drop down, what we are doing, so we are directly giving this report definition as the source. Okay, and whatever the value I select here in this state selection, like Jammu and Kashmir, that value has to be passed as a parameter to this report definition. So for that, let me open the report definition and let me make this report definition to accept parameters first. I'm giving something like state code for RD, something like this. So this should be of text. Okay, so you understood, right? Whatever the value we are selecting in the state selection like AP or TN, that value has to be passed as a source to this drop down, and the drop down source here we are defining it like report definition. So that's why I'm opening this report definition, and to make this value acceptable, I'm defining the parameter, and this have to be filtered out based on the parameter values. Param dot, we have to give the column source, it's not prompting. So this has to be filtered out based on the state code, right? Getting my point? So these values should be shown based on the state code values. Save this. And during runtime, it will be accepting the blank values. For the first time, it will be showing all the values. So that I'm restricting here. Okay. Save this. So should I have to make any other modifications? I need not do anything. Why? Because I'm directly calling this report definition rule. I'm not calling this report definition rule from data page. Suppose if you are using this here as a data page, then what you have to do, you have to define one new parameter in the data page also, and the data page and the report definition you have to provide the linking, and the same process what we have done for the second drop. And now this report definition I have just applied for few parameters, and if I have to whenever we are executing this particular report definition rule which is having some parameters defined, it has to ask for those values. Now if we select it again, it will be asking for the parameters. So earlier it has already loaded, right? Now I'm trying to refresh it, that's it. So what should be the value of this particular parameter which has been defined here? So what should be the value? It should be of state selection. So if I select AP there, Andhra Pradesh there, AP value will be stored in the clipboard. That value I want to pass it to this hospital selection. So I'm directly selecting state selection here. And I want to use this for the processing the hospital code and hospital name. Submit and save this. Sorry. This might be the lengthy process, but if you practice it, it will be very easy. So you practice it for 2 to 3 times, and if you are familiar with that, you just try to implement for 4 or 5 cascading dropdowns. You can able to see by default we are not getting any values. Why? Because we are restricting this particular dropdown or the particular report definition not to accept blank values. So it is not accepting blank values, and the parameter value will not be blank. If it is north south only, it should be pulling the data, and here also we should not be getting any data. On the selection of this only I have to get it. Okay, this seems to be valid business scenario. Now if I select north, I'll be getting only states related to north. You should not be getting this also by this time. So I should be getting only values related to this particular selection. If I select Uttar Pradesh, I should be getting only hospitals related to that particular state. Getting my point? So this is how we can able to work out. If I select south value, these values will be changed and we can able to see it. So it is working fine for all the things. Understood? So this is very important topic. And if we want to pass the parameters, this should be the approach. If you are clear and if you are okay with this kind of discussion, I'll continue for some more time. There are some things that has to be discussed related to parameters, and if you are okay and if we can able to take it now, I can able to continue, or if you are feeling like a bit confusion, I'll stop it. It's up to you. You want me to continue or you want to practice till now and come in the next class?
I need a practice. How about Tulani?
I think I need practice too because
Yes, yes.
past few days I was not practicing.
Okay. So there will be nothing like much challenging here. The thing is you have to practice, that's it. So this is completely seems to be like a process oriented. Okay, first what you have to remember this particular value has to be passed to the data page, and this value has to be passed to the report definition like this. So if you follow this kind of approach, it will be easy for you. And you have to remember that like you have to create me these many parameters and I have to pass it like this. If you feel in the other way, then it will be like confusion for you. Okay, so if you want to practice, I mean if you want to drop it now, I can able to leave. Plus if you give me 5 minutes of time, there will be some small topic related to parameters only. If you want me to continue, I'll do that, else we'll continue tomorrow, no problem for me.
Yeah, in 5 minutes is small concepts, then no issues. But if we
It's
are
related
moving to new concepts, then we can follow up with that tomorrow class.
the same topic related to parameters only. Let me show you. So for the first approach, what we have done, so whatever the value we are selecting in the region value, that value is being passed as a parameter to data page initially, and this parameter in this data page is being passed to report definition. Correct? So this is the thing we have observed, right? And in this approach, what we are trying to do, whatever the parameters we have in data page, that parameters will be passed to report definition. Suppose if I have 10 parameters in my data page. Getting my point? So this is the data page for which we are accepting the parameters, and the same parameters I'm trying to pass into this report definition. Suppose if I have 10 different parameters defined, okay, and if I want to pass all these 10 parameters to the next rule which is invoked here, like report definition. If I have some hundreds of some hundreds of parameters in this data page, and if I want to pass all these 100 parameters to the source rule like report definition, what we have to do is the same thing. I have to create 100 different parameters here, and I have to create 100 different parameters here. Naming might be different, that's up to you, and we have to pass each and everything here. So that is the approach what we can able to follow with our knowledge as of now. Okay, so instead of passing each and every parameter from one rule to another rule, what we have to do is we can directly go for parameter pages. Okay, so if I have hundreds of parameters in this data page, and if I want to pass all these hundreds of parameters to the report definition, you need not create it separately and you need not pass it one by one. We have to create it, that's secondary. We need not pass it one by one here. Okay, here we will be getting hundreds of values, hundreds of text boxes. Okay, and instead of we linking each and everything, we can directly go for parameter page. So the parameter page is a concept where I can able to pass all the parameters which are defined in this page. I can able to pass all the parameters which are defined in this page to the next rule. Okay, instead of I selecting 100 parameters, you just define 100 parameters in the data page. Here we should be getting all the 100 parameters. And instead of we selecting each value mapped here, if I just click on this, what it will be doing, what are all the parameters I have automatically defined in this data page, those values will be passed directly to the report definition also. So there should not be any manual mapping needed. Okay, so if I just mark this checkbox, all the things will be hidden out. Got my point? So if I want to use all these parameters equally there, the thing what you have to do is you have to define the same name parameters. So here we are giving this as a parameter for this data page, region for DP, and this is the same parameter defined for the report definition. So if I want to pass this parameter page, we have to have this parameter name and this parameter name same. Everything should be same. It's completely case sensitive. Everything should be same. If those are not same, you have to map it manually. If you want to pass this as a parameter page, you have to mark this, and before that you have to make both the parameter values as same. So let me show you. So this is the parameter page what I have defined for the data page, right? Let me show you the parameter page passing also, and the report definition rule also should be given with the same parameter name. Okay, I'm giving the same parameter name, and here also it has to be changed. Save this. Okay, so save this, submit, and save. Refresh. So even then it is working fine. You can able to see. Okay, the concept of parameter page meaning I can able to pass all the parameters from one page to another page directly. Instead of we linking each and every parameter, we can able to link all the parameters. Sorry, we can able to pass whole page. Suppose if my data page is having 100 parameters. Okay, starting from 1 to 100, I have 100 parameters, and my report definition is having only 10 parameters. Okay, so whatever the names that is being matched in both the rows, only those values will be passed there. So that is the concept of parameter pages. Okay, understood both of you? Clear, right? And Uma, you also right? So shall we drop off? Any doubts? Uma, Tulani, you are right, clear, no? Uma, any doubts?
No.